Welcome back to Mixed Media. We are back for some gaming stuff. We're still waiting for Ben, but I believe Ben will be back. We've got this awesome, interesting topic that I did not know anything about until I literally looked it up. I hope my example of Warzone is accurate. And it's gaming as a service, which I think is really interesting because it contrasts with software as a service. And Nathan will take it away.
All right, so topic is gaming as a service, but specifically how it'll be harmful to the gaming industry in the long term. That's not to say there are no good things about it. I'll get to that, but my chief point is that in the long term, no good. Probably, I think. I could be wrong. This is one of the ones where I'm less sure of. So first, let's go over what gaming as a service or games as a service is. It's also known as live service, or you can call the games that are part of that category live games. And as everything said, it's like software as a service, the same concept, except it's for games. Or technically it is a software as a service because games are software, but at least video games. So essentially the game is continuously updated in order to bring in more revenue, right? So example is like on the screen is Warzone, where as time goes on, they might add, say, skins, for example, right? And then you can buy the skins. And so they continuously update the game. Maybe they'll, add, new content, new features, whatever it is, in order to extend the lifetime of the game. And there are many ways to get revenue from this that I'll explain later. This is contrary to games as a product, which is sort of the more traditional way of doing things. This is like, I guess, the original way, since games as a service requires that you have an internet connection, right? Whereas, in the early days when people were gaming on older consoles, like, talking like GaaS and stuff like that, they weren't connected to the internet, so games as a service wasn't even something that would be possible, right? Unless you distributed the physical game, for an update, but that didn't happen because it's just cumbersome. So, yeah, like a sort of, release the game once and it's done kind of thing. That's games as a product, and that's the normal way of doing things. At least it was the normal way of doing things. So some examples. Obviously, Warzone, as I said before. Sometimes games will add characters. So example would be like agents in Valorant, or you could even extend this example to cars in Rocket League. Some games have a subscription service, so in order to keep playing, you have to pay. So I believe World of Warcraft is a subscription service. A lot of MMOs are subscriptions like that. Some MMOs aren't
World of Warcraft is extremely old with that model. That's like maybe one of the first.
It's one of the original games as a service things, which is interesting because this is like sort of the dawn of multiplayer gaming, right? And it's like, at least especially massive multiplayer gaming, and they decided to go with that route instead of the normal you just buy it, which probably makes sense when you think about it, because you have to pay for servers continuously, right? And so if you imagine there's no precedent in servers in game pricing or anything like that, and someone said, well, we have this product, it's what's called a video game, right? So it's brand new and it's multiplayer, and you have to keep paying for the server. You're probably going to make it so that you have to keep paying to use it, like that's like if you just leave the video game world, right? And it's just anything that costs you money consistently to use, right? If you leave the whole software world, really, then costs you as the company, it costs you money to consistently use, then you would probably expect that your customer pay consistently to use it, unless the costs are very minimal and stuff like that. Which servers aren't necessarily, maintenance and stuff like that. Although now we have things like Google Cloud and stuff like that, or Amazon Web Services where you're not doing the maintenance yourself. But World of Warcraft subscription service. Games add things like new items, new cosmetics, whatever. All free-to-play games that intend to make money. So basically, any free-to-play game that's not a passion project, like not solely a passion project, is a service. And so let's get on to my point of how I think it'll be harmful in the long term for the video games industry. First point is that people will play games for a longer amount of time without paying proportionally, right? This is sort of what I was saying before, where you would expect people to pay for using a service, right? For using something that costs money consistently for the company to create, essentially. This is not the case. So this is, it's both a pro and a con in a way, right? Because, obviously it's good for the consumer if they're getting more value for their money, right? But at the end of the day, the health of the video games industry doesn't matter what, the consumer doesn't determine that. That's determined by the companies that are part of the gaming industry, right? And so, the company has to be in good shape, right? That's not to say that you can neglect the consumer, because then the company is not going to be in good shape, right? It's sort of a symbiotic relationship. So obviously need to provide a good product, but not at great expenses, right? That don't make sense. So what happens when you create games that you can play for a really long time is that people have less time to play different games, right? So let's take, some people have hundreds of hours on games, some people have over 1,000, right? Now, contrast something like a movie, right? No one has 1,000 hours in a movie, because that would be actually insane. Or even hundreds of hours in a movie. I don't think anyone has 100 hours in a movie, in one movie specifically. You have to watch it like maybe 40 times, right? That's a lot of times to watch a movie.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and never get bored with it. But video games are obviously different. They have a lot of replayability oftentimes, and the video games as a service only increases that, right? Because as new content comes out, now it's a new experience in some sense for you to play. It depends. Sometimes it's less of a new experience. Like if they add a cosmetic that you don't buy, that's not really a new experience for you. But if they add, let's say it's Valorant, where they add a new map, that is a new experience for you, and you might be inclined to play the game again just to experience that new level and see what it's like. In that case, then the strategy of games as a service has worked in Valorant's favor. But yeah, you create games where the playtime is absolutely humongous, and this creates a low demand for games because people are too busy playing one game over another. Because at the end of the day, everyone's fighting for your time essentially. However many hours you allot to playing games. Everyone's fighting for that time, and they try to make better games because then it may cause you to essentially increase the amount of hours you're willing to allot to something, because you're like, oh, but this game's really good though. I really want to play it, right? Or I'll play it even longer. Yeah, really, the goal of from a purely I'm trying to sell you something standpoint, right? The goal of a game is to just get you to play it like for a minute, at least, right? Because they get to buy it, right? So everyone's just fighting for, it's crazy to think about. Everyone's just fighting for at least a minute, but not everyone can even get that. So that's how at a low demand we are at currently. That it's this is sort of related to what I was talking about before with the indie-pocalypse, or whatever you want to call it. I said that it's not as big of a deal as I think people are saying it is, but it's certainly not the simplest thing ever to break into the gaming industry, and you can definitely get screwed by bad luck, or whatever it is that causes you to have a great idea and you do everything correctly, but it just doesn't. You market correctly, as I was talking about before, but it just doesn't turn out the way you want it to in terms of sales. This causes devs to have a harder time, and it means that they're going to be a lot more. They're going to be playing things a lot more safe, right? We're talking like specifically well-established developers, all right? They're not going to want to lose the foothold that they have in the, because they're in a position that's hard to get into to begin with, right? They're not going to want to lose that, and they're going to tend to experiment even less, than they do already. Doing things that they know will work. For example, like when the culling came out, and battle royales were like, that was like. The culling was one of the first like major battle royales, and then some companies were like, "Hey, that's pretty cool," and then they realized that works, right? And so then PUBG came out, and I guess you could say PUBG experimented, right? Because battle royales weren't a humongous thing yet, I guess, right? And then Fortnite did it. I would not say Fortnite was experimenting in the same way, right? Yeah, they had building elements, but at the core of the game was they clearly hopped into something they knew would work, right? At least they didn't know if the building part would work, but they intentionally took, something that they for sure had a large audience, people who were playing, and they were like, well, let's just grab that because we know it works, and we can put that in our pre-existing Fortnite game, and then create the battle royale game mode. And then from there, you have like 1,000,000,001 other battle royale games that came out, because experimentation is scary, right? Because there's a chance that the thing you think people will like, people just won't like, because it's experimental, all right? You've never seen someone create a game like that, or very few people create a game like that. You end up getting just worse quality games, because experimentation is what causes games to be of great quality, right? You need to find out what works, and the only way to do that is through experimentation. And yes, I guess a sub point that's pretty related to what I just said before is that the small indie game dream because not even indie, right? Just the small game dev dream in general. You're not talking about like two-person. I'm talking about like you can have even like be under a publisher or whatever, but you're not like EA or Activision Blizzard, right? It becomes a lot less viable. It becomes a lot more hard because there's no space to compete really, or not as much space to compete really than there could be. Obviously, some people might not relate to this. They might be like, "Oh, but I play so many games every year." There are definitely a lot of people who play games for half an hour and just say, "Well, it wasn't my kind of game, or maybe I liked it, but I'd rather be playing something else," and they stop. Right? Those aren't they're not the problem. They're not part of the problem, right? Like, I'm not saying the consumer is the problem. I'm saying the consumer is the problem indirectly, right? The consumer who, plays a game for hundreds of hours, like me, for example, right? Like, indirectly part of the problem because we don't end up buying something else, and it's caused by games as a service, is my point. So I guess directly caused by the company, I guess, in a way. Or is it the other way? I mean, the initial cause, right? The thing that happened first, I guess, is the company making the game as a service game, right? Then it comes that the consumer, is playing it for a long time, whatever. Second point, after games being super long, without having to pay for it being long, is that I forgot to say, there's one thing that actually breaks this trend, right? And that's subscription services, and that actually gives the devs money for people playing it proportional to the time that they play it, right? This solves some issues, right, of the devs having a harder time, right, because now they're making more money, but it doesn't solve the problem of devs having a harder time getting into the industry. I think it's a smaller problem than devs not having enough money based on the content they produce. So I think that's a worthy trade-off. I think it makes a lot of sense. I also don't think it necessarily makes sense for a company to, have to cater to letting other companies exist. I'm not saying, there should be monopolies. What I'm saying is you don't have to be like, oh, I see that you're suffering because, there's a hard competitive space. Let me not make a game this year or something like that, right? I'm not saying that. Just that's more of a side thing, I guess, more of a negative side effect that I wouldn't expect companies to go for, I guess, anyways. But the second point is that the initial product is likely to be worse. I say this because the incentive to release something that's genuinely a good game at launch is going to be less than less as a service if rather than if it was a product, right? So if you create a really bad game, you can always patch it later in the games as a service thing, right? Obviously, some games are not really able to be patched in that way because patching takes effort, and obviously, if you entrench yourself in bad code, for example, it's going to be very hard to get out of that, right? Or if you create a bad story, you can't just rewrite the story, right? You can add to the story, but I've never heard of an example where the story was just changed. Otherwise, yeah, you can oftentimes just patch the game later in, say, No Man's Sky, for example. It's literally the classic example I keep bringing up because I guess it exemplifies a lot of things that are kind of bad and kind of good about the gaming industry. Yeah, the game currently sits at I think it's mostly positive on Steam, the review thing, which is, I don't know what it was at the start. I assume it was overwhelmingly negative or mostly negative because of how, bad of a reception it got. But it was able to patch it itself and become better, right? And you say, well, this is good or this is bad, right? On one hand, the company got no punishment for, I shouldn't say no punishment. It got perhaps less punishment than it should have for creating for essentially not being truthful about what was in their game at launch, right? At the same time, it allowed them to make the game better, right? But we could just avoid the whole situation. We just made the game better from the start, I don't think this roundabout way of doing things is benefiting anyone. Well, except for the companies who don't have to create something good at the start, I guess, which is not good for the video games industry as a whole. That's what my point is.
Do you think
so? Yeah, it's a lot better for your profits if you can spend less time on your game initially. So it doesn't have to be fully polished. It could be something, good enough essentially, and then you can make it better as time goes on. I think there are cases where this works, and essentially where I wouldn't find this a bad thing, and that's in cases where the game isn't bad at start. Take a game like RimWorld, for example. RimWorld is a game that still receives updates, and the game is not old. I mean, it's not young, it's not new. it's not Minecraft old, but it's not like it came out yesterday. Somewhere
Yeah.
in between. Um, and it still receives updates, perhaps longer than your average game, I guess, for receiving updates. And clearly, it's a games as a service thing, right? But I would say the game was just good from the start, right? And this is one of the good things with the games as a service is that you can take in community feedback and be like, okay, like people want this added to the game. I didn't think about this myself. All right, I'll add it to the game. I think it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
That's the good side. The bad side is when you get stuff like, I'm just going to tell my consumer something about the game that's not true. They'll be upset, but that's okay because I can just add the thing later. We can say, oh, well, we expected it to happen, but the deadline just came up. Even if you knew full well it wasn't going to happen, the deadline
Yeah.
just came up. We'll get it to you soon. That's kind of it's part of like cyberpunk syndrome, right? When cyberpunk came out, people were still, because it was like, it was a disaster in terms of the PR. Everyone knew it was not a good state, but people were still like, I still hear it from people saying, "Well, should I buy it because I know it'll get better? It'll just get better. They'll patch the bugs and stuff like that." And I'm like, really? I mean, really? You're just gonna get like, I don't know. It's something
Yeah.
so like that really bothers me about that, right? That you can just create some absolute garbage, right? You can put on a poor representation of what the game is in a trailer, because they just, avoided everything negative about the game. It's not even like, avoiding bugs in your trailer is understandable. If your entire game is a bug, though, I mean, come on. You just can't release it. That's just it, right? Or at least say, hey, we're running up our deadline. This game is not quite there yet, so if you buy it, just understand. You don't even have to say how bad it is. You just to say, buy your own risk. Maybe wait for some reviews or something like that. Whatever you want to do to skirt around the problem. I mean, I'd rather you just not skirt around the problem, but if you want to go that route, right, it's just better if you skirt around the problem.
Yeah.
But they don't have to. They can just make a bad game because people will just buy it anyways. It doesn't matter. They'll be like, oh yeah, games as a service, games get better.
Yeah.
And maybe the game did get better, but was the company really deserving of that kind of money for that? For essentially, lying to you? Are you gonna really like? I don't know. It just bothers me so much.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
no.
truthful devs with good games get $0
What was the
because
game that you were just mentioning? I didn't hear it. Or yeah,
Cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking that the same thing is practically true about like, I mean, I haven't followed the dev process in a while now, but I mean the dev process is like, I don't know, maybe nearing on. Is it nearing on like, I don't know, a decade? I have no idea. But Star Citizen, like,
Oh yeah, I don't know
eh,
how old that is, but it's definitely been like it's been years. Definitely, it's been
it's been
many
a
years.
long time. Yeah. And they kind of have a similar, not similar, but they have a problem too with like, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I still know some people play Star Citizen, but it's still an unfinished game entirely. But they kind of lied to people and, how long it would take them to make it, even though they already paid into it, right? And there's a lot of scandals that happened post that. And maybe it just takes someone doing games as a service, like, well, right? Like, more like, I mean, World of Warcraft is probably a good example, right? Of games as a service, like, where it's a trustworthy provider. They, I mean, I'm not plugged into the community, so I don't really know how well their releases go. But I assume they go okay enough for they keep doing this for this long.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
yeah, I'm not. I'm also not like I'm not in. Yeah, I'm not I'm not into the World of Warcraft community, but I have. I do know of some people, some uh, public figures, I guess, who play World of Warcraft, and it seems that at least like maybe with the recent releases specifically, because I've only seen recent stuff, that things seem to be going well, and occasionally it's like I don't really like this thing, but in general, it seems like it's just good, at least for
yeah.
that audience.
I wonder why there's not better like companies that are just good at it. Like more companies that are just good at games as a service like that. Like that just
no one wants to pay subscription. World of Warcraft gets the pass because it did it early, but
yeah.
people want their free games, and then they'll cry when they get the loot box. They're like, oh, I just want a free game with
people are still talking about Battlefield. You have to pay the price
somehow, right? Like,
yeah, people are still talking about how Battlefield has no single player.
Wait, didn't they release a single player? Didn't they add it?
Wait, what?
Because wait, let me look this up. Battlefield. There's a trailer. I don't think I took this into the trailer, but Battlefield 2042 campaign. Wait, what? I don't know, dude. I thought I saw a story. I saw a story, like a trailer that looked like it was from like a story, right? It wasn't a gameplay trailer or anything. It just looked like a straight story. Like clearly there's some lore. You know what I'm saying? Like Battlefield trailer.
Maybe they'll do what like Warzone does, and like the Warzone route is actually pretty cool. I like the evolving Warzone story that's not tied to any campaign, right? Like it's just every season of Warzone, there's like a new little cutscene that sort of progresses how Warzone changes. And that's not even the most interesting part, right? Like they build the lore throughout the entire system, like in the menus, and like, you get a new character, you get a little animation. Like, the world of Warzone is kind of well understood, even though I haven't read a single thing about the world of Warzone. You know what I mean? So, you can do that without having a literal single player. It would be smart for them to do it that way, I think.
Yeah, this is not a campaign. It says a short film. That's what it is.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I just thought it was a trailer. I was like, oh, well, obviously, this looks like a story to me, It was just I didn't know it was self-contained. I thought it was like part of something bigger, but...
okay, gotcha, yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, no
people campaign. Are still... people are still hangry. Like, they're just, like, absolutely... enraged still. I'm sure it's a minority of like weird people who are still like on this train, but it costs money to make single player. Battlefield doesn't make good single players. Therefore, hopefully this efficiency is keeping your game not as expensive while still having good multiplayer. So I'm kind of down for it. I'm kind of pro this, unless it's a Bad Company game. Then you need to have single player because Bad Company single players are actually decent.
For the record, Star Citizen was announced in 2012. Got $2 million in Kickstarter. Pre-production started in 2010. Production started in 2011. The game was originally anticipated for 2014, but was delayed, and then it was released to pre-purchasers and. You can't be serious. To pre-purchasers their pre-purchasers in 2015 and continues to receive updates. No predicted date for the commercial release of Star Citizen is currently given. You could pre-purchase this game 6 years ago, and the game still has not been released.
Okay, so the thing is, like, right, if they were transparent from the beginning, right, they're using CryEngine, they're doing super high detailed work.
They're not anymore, by the way.
Oh,
they're
really?
Using Amazon Lumberyard. Also, they received, you want to take a guess at how much money they received? Not through purchasing, like pre-purchases, but through, it says, crowdfunding and external investments. Do you want to guess? This is people who are doing this not because they received anything, by the way. Well, maybe crowdfunding, you receive some special
some skin
when you buy the game or whatever, but
yeah.
Maybe that doesn't include pre-purchases, because I guess that could be crowdfunding, because it's not like you're buying the thing technically. I don't know, but how much do you think that figure would be?
Dude, I have
by
zero clue.
March 2020.
I have zero clue.
No, just take a guess, man.
Take a guess. $2 million? I don't know.
Increase by over an order of magnitude.
Oh no! I underestimated humanity.
63.25 million.
Wait, what is it?
63.25 million.
Oh no! What are they doing with that money? That's insane.
I remember a couple years ago, maybe it was last year, maybe 2 years ago. I remember seeing something called Squadron 42, which is like some single player thing. I'm seeing it on Wikipedia now. It says, "It's just like, come on, man." I remember thinking like it looked really nice, like beautiful, right? Like in terms of visually, right? The Squadron 42, a single player game set in the same universe, was initially announced in Kickstarter as an included campaign. They went to Kickstarter again for a part of their game.
So here's my point though about like Star Citizen. if they were honest since the beginning about the fact that this was going to be a decades-long project and you were in it as an investor, right? Like you were paying into something that you're investing in for decades because otherwise this type of game could never be made. Which the argument can be made that this type of game could never be made because it's just too cost prohibitive. There's no amount of investment you could get unless you really convince like a big whale like a Microsoft or something to invest in it. There's no amount of money that you can get from investment to make this game happen. The problem is the lack of transparency. Like they said, oh yeah, like pre-buy the game and the game will be out in like 2 years, right? Like, and it's been almost a decade since since all this stuff, and fans didn't know that. And I would have much rather them say, we're going to build this world piece by piece and have like a very like good plan, like a playable plan, right? Where you start with like, okay, let's just start with one planet and you can play on that planet, right? Then let's make that planet multiplayer and you can play on that planet multiplayer. Then let's make this solar system, right? But instead of doing that, they just make a big, gigantic, broken thing that just has continuously like non-functioning parts being added to it instead of like being able to pick it up and actually play it as intended. You know what I mean? Like, why didn't they just take a path that actually made sense to subscribe for because you were in it for the vision? You know what I mean? Instead of this being this like, oh, we're gonna like chase this trail and then chase this trail. Let's make this single player like let's make this single player and Kickstarter for that. Like, I feel like it could have been a convincible project, if it was done properly. And maybe that would have been a good example of gaming as a service if they had planned it to be that way instead of it being like garbage.
Yeah. I don't know. I wonder if they even care anymore. Yeah. I wonder if they care again, or just a scheme, the entire time.
But the thing is, the concept is like, I mean, they put a lot of work into the art. At least the art is like, like
yeah. Well, that's the part that like you get someone to do it who's passionate about it, and obviously it's still getting work for them, but that's the easy part. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Relatively speaking, I'm not saying it's easy. But I'm saying if for the amount of money you're getting, that's easy.
Yeah. But I wonder if like overall though, if there were more companies that were doing gaming as a service better, if that would compete well against the companies that do it poorly or like don't do it and then do other things that are kind of unsavory. Whether that would push competition in a good direction, and then we wouldn't see like a lot of the problems that you mentioned.
I don't know where I was.
Oh yeah, we went on a crazy bunny trail.
We digressed. I don't even know what we started with.
You were talking about Cyberpunk, yeah.
In summary, with Cyberpunk, yeah, it's setting a precedent where the idea that you can create a game that's horrible, you can still make a lot of money by promising good updates, essentially. Or you don't have to say you're gonna have good updates. You can just have people expect it because that's just they'll be like, oh, but I don't even know if Cyberpunk ever said it was a live service game, right? For all we knew, it could have just been released and then dumped, It could have been just it, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if they ever said that, or if it was just assumed. I believe it would be eligible for the next Video Game Awards. I don't believe it was eligible for the last one. I wonder if it'll show. If it shows up for anything, I don't know, man. I might just well, there's some things where it's like art, for example, like obviously like that's not like that wasn't the bad part, you know what I'm saying? Although some of it's questionable, but that wasn't the bad part.
I mean, there's some problems with like, I mean, if you don't have a 3080,
it looks kind of weird sometimes.
Yeah. If you don't have a 3080, then you can't even appreciate a lot of the art, which is a big flaw,
Yeah,
like, if you don't have ray tracing.
What do you judge the art on? Do you judge it on like its potential? Because what if you use a supercomputer, right? And you're saying, I have the best graphics in the world. I mean, technically, yes, probably, right? Because you can run it on a supercomputer and it'll have like premium ray tracing, right? And, it'll be like true ray tracing, unlike current ray tracing with like RTX, which is like it's ray tracing, but like watered down essentially.
I think it should be judged off of
accurate, I guess.
How well it serves the work, and like also mixed in on its own. Like maybe there should be like a combined which makes it even more subjective and annoying.
Yeah, I feel like there's no guideline on that. It's probably just like, I'd probably just say vote on like best art. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
No criteria, which is strange because what art means to some people is they're gonna think about it in a different way. Probably. But yeah. Okay. So if it shows up for like best art, I mean, I think it's weird, but I don't know. I feel like it's just a disgrace of a game that it shouldn't like even appear. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah,
kind of feel
but
bad.
you
For the
don't
people
you know
who
how
made
much
the
they'll
art,
pay.
right? I
What
said
you
I
say?
kind of feel bad for the people who made the art, because the rest of it wasn't necessarily their fault. But it's like I don't know, man. Like, unfortunately, you're gonna have to pay for your company.
CD Projekt Red can do no wrong was the hype train.
Yeah, they made The Witcher. Didn't you guys know? They made three good games before, all in the same series. All right. Well, yeah. Anyways, moving on. So all in all, at that point about initial products likely to be worse, I think it might be just better. It might just be better to just have one shot at doing it correctly. Not necessarily one shot, but because games as a product aren't strictly one thing and no updates, right? Games as a product means that they don't like the intention is not to make money off of the updates specifically. So when you release the game, you're gonna have bugs. That's okay, right? Can't possibly find everything. People use different hardware, whatever is gonna cause some problems. Then you can, you fix the bugs, whatever. Maybe, as a feature request, whatever. And you're like, oh yeah, great idea, right? But you know, then you're done. You say, all right,
Yeah.
off to the on to the next project, whatever. We're not gonna add 70,000 new skins and make the game 100 gigabytes like Warzone, and then keep trying to make you buy it, or sell skins, whatever. So yeah, on to point three. Oh well, okay, it's very related. Yeah, it can cause scummy business practices, which is literally what we were just talking about with
Yeah.
Star Citizen and stuff like that. So, well, what I wrote down in my notes was that I didn't even think about Star Citizen or like Kickstarter stuff, but I wrote down that it essentially brought gambling into games, which is a it's kind of tough because a lot of these games are marketed towards kids, or maybe not explicitly, but implicitly somehow. Um, and child gambling is kind of not good. Uh,
Yeah, it's kind of like something people don't want to talk about too much.
I think that it's getting there's definitely some cover. It's definitely, well, it's illegal in some countries now, like gambling in I think some Asian countries may have a lot of legislation about gambling in video games. And did I send? I think I said this before, right? Last episode, something about Pokemon, and I think it's Korea having some law that might ban Pokemon, like a new remastered Pokemon or something like that, because
What?
something about gambling and like I don't remember, and I assume because it's marketed towards children, right?
Mm.
Essentially making a child gambling game, I guess.
I remember
Uh,
Pokemon Diamond, I believe, had it had like a casino thing in there where you could gamble. I can't remember what it was, and it
there
was
wasn't
just
real
like
money there, right? Because that wasn't connected to the internet. There was not. That
no,
wasn't
no.
connected.
So there's no real money. I was just saying. I wonder if it was. It's just like it. Like, is it so strict that even the concept of gambling in a game is like restricted? I wonder.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the details. I'm not even sure if it was I don't even know. I think it's Pokemon. I think it's Korea, but the rest of the details, not too sure about.
Mm.
But, yeah, not only do kids end up seeing like gambling and stuff like that in their games, but they also see on Twitch, right? A lot of Twitch streamers who are fairly wealthy, will be like, "Oh, I have $1,000 to burn because I literally have like $1 billion. It literally doesn't make a difference to me." And this is like content people will watch or whatever, right? And you have some kid watching that. It's like,
Buying the
ooh,
Doge,
huh?
the Doge crypto.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say the full name, but I can't because I don't know what'll happen on YouTube. But cryptos are heavily like keyworded on YouTube because
I
there are a
see.
lot of scams like with crypto. But the Doge,
Yeah, big connects.
yeah,
um, but yeah, seeing it on Twitch and stuff like that, yeah, no good. But aside from gambling, there's also stuff like paywalls, which, okay, I guess it depends on what you define as a paywall. Let's say it can be done correctly, but okay, if you define a paywall as literally something where you need to pay to progress in the game, it can be done correctly, right? I think you can essentially a free trial. You know what I'm saying? You're playing the game for
yeah,
free, you reach the paywall, and you just pay for the thing, and you get more game. Right? The difference where the game just soft locks you from continuing or something like that, right? Where it's like, I mean, you could grind 100 hours to progress, or you could just buy it. It's like, all right,
World of Tanks,
you're just being untruthful. The answer is you just buy it. Like, or sometimes they'll
yeah,
make it like, technically on the edge of possibility. You know what I'm saying? Or some people will do it. But very few people will do it.
yeah.
um, Most people will just buy it. It's like, just say pay for the thing. Like, that is what you're saying. I don't know. It's kind of, or you could just say like, we're gonna have this lotto thing. You can go into the lotto. You have a 1 in like, I don't know, 1 in 200 chance of passing the paywall for free, or you pay for it. That is the same exact thing, except you just said it outright, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Getting past the Covenanter in World of Tanks, I'll never forget it.
Yeah. And some people probably got past it. They're the 1 in 200, right?
Yeah.
They did it, but I'm sure a lot of people just paid for it. Especially because I think there's some trickery there too that makes you more likely to pay for it, because you end up thinking it's possible, and then you sink so much time into it that you get like the sunk cost fallacy, where it's like, okay, I spent like 10 hours trying to continue. I'm going to continue, Yeah. So. Yeah,
I mean, like, I remember, it was probably, I don't remember last time I played World of Tanks many, many years ago, but I remember looking up on YouTube. I was so desperate because I couldn't get past the Covenanter. I remember looking up on YouTube, Covenanter tips and tricks and whatever, and literally the tips and tricks were just try to live until the end of the match and hope your team wins, or
oh my goodness.
so that you can get the XP from winning. Or like try to take pot shots at people so you can get the try to like hit and run, but the thing is not even like it's not even good at that strategy. Like and a lot of people mention in their videos, just pay for it. Literally, or like just pay for the next year. Like that's how you get past the Covenanter. So yeah, just tell me that World of Tanks. Just say you're pretty much done here.
That's a pretty good free trial, when you think about it. Because it probably got a good amount of hours,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay, I guess they probably would receive less because the moment people reach that trial barrier, going to be a lot of people just drop out. They're like, well, I don't think the game is worth that much because, well, I think people undervalue games. But, in their mind, the game is not worth that much, right?
Yeah.
Which is one of the things where it's like this is like a chain of problems. If you just bought the game, right? Like this wouldn't even be a problem if you're willing to buy the game.
Yeah.
If you're willing to pay the $15, or whatever it is. Probably more than that because it's weird. None of it makes sense because having a AAA game be $15 does not exist, right? It's either it's $0 or it's $60. There's no in between. It's very strange, but which even though the Covenanter might cost like $10, whatever it is, right? Like. They still would not sell. They would not sell past the paywall if they just explicitly sold it. They would not sell it for $15 because that just the unspoken laws of video game marketing say so. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that's just how it is.
I just think it just takes there's just a cultural change, right, from like the dev side, which is very hard because video games. I feel like video games are in like the old Hollywood like stage where it's so expensive to make a video game that there are a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of gatekeeping happening, and because there's a lot of gatekeeping happening, people want to control. Those gatekeepers want to control every aspect about the culture and everything like that. But the moment you get like more democratization of making games is the moment that you'll find just people who are just willing to be more transparent doing better, that's it because they just are trusted.
It's kind of sad because developers known for being specifically programmers, well, even artists, I think okay. Yeah, I've heard bad stories from like every department, so maybe it's just everything. In the video game industry, just known for like being a bad job essentially in terms of how much time it takes out of your life and stress and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But people do it for the passion of it, which is like that's highly respectable and also highly sad, Yeah. But it has to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. That's the thing, right? It's not like there's something inherently bad about video games and their cost to the cost ratio. You know what I'm saying? It's,
not at all.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. This is like, because if I end up working in the video game industry, there's the goal, right? It's like, that's going to hurt, Having to, because in theory, and I'd rather own my own company, right? And if that doesn't work out, then work for a video game development company. If I work for one, that's, if it ends up being bad, I might just quit. You know what I'm saying? I don't think I have that kind of drive to it's like the people I'm selling it to don't appreciate it, so I'm just not going to do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to keep catering to you essentially. And And if I'm,
Yeah.
the owner of such a company, I can't do things like crunch time and stuff like that and underpaying, right? Like, especially crunch time.
Uh-huh.
Underpaying is like, that's also whack, but at least it's like, it's like, if everyone says, okay, I gain enough value myself because I find this fulfilling, then, it's like,
Yeah.
is it really underpaying? I don't know. But, um,
Yeah.
but then, it just makes it harder to survive. Stuff like that. And like, people, okay, so I'm going to digress a bit, but, essentially large video game development studios will contract uh, like literally companies whose job or they're just contractors essentially who make art or program because they can't finish their games on time, and
Wow.
those companies themselves will be under crunch, like the contractors, because they're like, because essentially, right, the company is going to go to whoever asks for the least amount of money or says they can do it in the fastest time, right? So they're all
Yeah.
competing each other to do it for the fastest time. Yeah, if it goes to essentially the highest bidder in a way, right? Um, and the highest bidder in this case is the person who's willing to put their employees through the worst treatment, essentially, right? And there are like massive companies who do that specifically for programming and for art, but I'm sure there's like stuff for like probably I think music's different because you can't brute force music the same way as you can brute force art and programming. Um, Especially because like in music you tend to have one unified composer, right? Whereas in art, yeah, you have a an art director, but then you have like a billion other people doing their own things, making like building it up essentially, and they can do their own work concurrently. So it's easier to buy crunch overseas from that kind of stuff. And essentially, I say overseas because you can exploit countries where their labor laws aren't as nice, I guess. They can work longer hours for less pay, essentially. But yeah, I digressed. Anyways, back to the topic. Those are my 3 points. I think so I said before, it's not entirely bad. Like they're good examples. Like I think I mentioned RimWorld before. I would consider that a good use of games as a service. The game was good from the start, added features that people wanted. It wasn't excuse. It wasn't an excuse to create something bad from the start. I wonder if games as a service was even something that was planned at the start. It's a sandbox kind of game, so I think sandbox games essentially are more ripe for games as a service because adding new items and things you can place, right, is something that you can always do essentially. Whereas in a game, I don't know, say Warzone, right? It's more baked, right? You can't necessarily add a new feature like that without breaking the game. Essentially, you know,
Hmm.
you can't just say, "Oh, now the player can fly," and that's not gonna work out well with the rest of the balance, right? Stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe it's a shifting state in video games where essentially it becomes more economical in the short term to do games as a service because of the current culture of the consumers of video games. Um, as I said before, I think it's unhealthy for the long-term state of the video game industry, but understandably, no company wants to not do that because in the short term, it's very profitable, and not doing so could end in more risk essentially. Um, I wonder if in the future, if it continues shifting in this direction, where essentially smaller game dev studios, sort of how I was talking about the overseas crunch buying thing, uh, smaller dev studios will essentially be contracted to create, you know, essentially patches for live service games, or like, essentially like maybe contracted to create like a game mode or something like that, right? Imagine if the live service updates became a lot more prominent. They were less like, oh, I added a new skin, more like I added a whole new, I don't know, whole new map or well, that's the thing. I meant an open world map. So I was talking about uh, added a whole new, a larger thing than we currently get, right? And I wonder if, yeah, essentially there'll be companies who specialize in just being like the general programmer, the general artist, whatever it is, so that they can create for a variety of companies. Which having a generalized studio do that is going to compound on the problem of a lack of originality that I was talking about before, because they're not going to be stylized, right? Um, Maybe they'll have their own slight styles because you can say, oh, I prefer this artist's artistic style over this one, right? And that's my company's appeal, is that I provide this artistic style, but I'm not going to deviate into something like, say, Riot Games is a very has a very stylized style, right? Very stylized. Their artists are, if you ever go on like Instagram and you look at the artists' portfolios or whatever, right, on Instagram, they'll draw in that style like naturally, right? Like I assume they're selected based on the fact that they can do that and they're trained to do that. So that's the stuff they tend to pump out, right? If you have these generic studios doing this, you might get slightly stylized things. We're not going to get anything like that, probably. At least it's not going to be as well executed. I think Riot Games has a very great art team, great art direction. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Cool. And Ben popped in at the end of that whole segment. Ben, what are your thoughts on games as a service? That's a joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's cool. That's very interesting. I didn't know anything about this topic, so I think that those are all interesting thoughts.